Got the pen and the paper in your hand. Got the story going, but you want it to expand. We'll help you on your journey, let us lend you a hand. Join the show. So let's write the book TV show. Grab your pen and paper and we're gonna let it flow. Talking about write the book TV. Join the show.
Welcome to Write the Book TV. I'm your host, Kimberly LeBou. Each week we show up here interviewing authors and experts around all things writing and publishing. And boy, do we have a special show for you today. We have in the building with us Miss LaQuisha Hall. So welcome to the segment, LaQuisha. I'm so happy to have you.
You know I'm always happy to be in your presence.
Oh, likewise, likewise. This is such a joy already. There's certain people when they sit down, it's like, oh, this is going to be fabulous. We're going to have to try to work it all in. But I want to talk to you, of course, about your writing, all the books that you have out. You're an author, you're a creative. And so I love that so much about you. And so we're going to start at the beginning talking about your first book. I believe is your first book was
Yes.
Positively Bountiful.
Yes. Oh,
And so
good.
tell us a little bit about that book, because this is where it all began.
That is where it all began. I have been an educator in Baltimore for, this is my 21st year in the district. Yes, I need
Kudos
all
to
those
you.
claps.
Yes.
And I had a mentoring program, as you
Mhm.
also are aware of, because you
Absolutely.
supported me with that.
Yes.
And in the process of mentoring young ladies, I realized there was so much information
Mm-hmm.
that they didn't know,
Yeah.
as well as so much lifting of their spirits that needed to happen. And I also was that teenage girl.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to write what I needed as a teenager myself. And I turned it into somewhat of a workbook as well, so they could like navigate their own way through those difficult conversations that we often don't want to or feel uncomfortable having
Yeah.
with teens. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's awesome. And so I want to talk to you about your journey as a writer, because things evolve. You started there, and I know you've done so much more. So I want you to talk a little bit about, first of all, your journey, but then how your writing has changed and evolved over time.
Yeah, so first, my journey started when I was very young.
Yeah.
Coming from a background of violence and abuse, I needed an outlet.
Yeah.
And so writing, journaling, having that little diary with the locket and the key. We
Yes.
could never find the key, so you never locked it. That's where I started. But I also had that story, which I've heard others share, where I wrote things that were very personal, discovered by my parent. I got in trouble, and then that ended my writing career very early. And so, of course, I started to like resurface even as a teen through poetry. I would subliminally say
Okay.
what I needed to say. I was like, y'all don't know what the color green represents in this poem, but it's a monster.
Oh, Lord.
And so I took that journey. I went to college. I wrote for the university newspaper and
Nice.
became a part of the staff. I was an English major, so I did
Wow.
all that writing.
Yeah.
And then as I matriculated into becoming an English teacher, I recognized that not only did I have the power to write for teenagers like I did for the young ladies through
Yeah.
Positively Bountiful, but I also realized that they were great writers as well. I mean, because I was their teacher.
Absolutely.
But also because they have a lot of experiences,
Yes.
oftentimes that people don't give them the space to share.
Yeah.
And so I felt like a lot of the young people I was encountering were carrying a burden. And so I was thinking about how I laid my burden down as a teen. It was through writing. And so I would let them write in the classroom. This didn't turn into a book project yet.
Yeah.
And what I recognized that they needed to have not just an outlet, but a way to be celebrated for even putting that on paper.
On paper. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so I went from writing, co-authoring books to publishing students.
Yes, I want you to talk about your books. Talk about, I think there's one up there. Man, I forgot the name of it already. Well, what's up there?
You had which one? Because you know I published 5 books of students.
Well, tell us
Tell you
about the
about all
last
of
one,
them?
because I think I chose the last one to talk
Yes,
about that you did with the scholars.
So first of all, this whole thing came about through my curriculum initially.
Mm-hmm.
I got them to write about the theme of what I taught in my English class,
Okay.
but based on their personal experience. So, for example, we read Their Eyes Were Watching God,
Mm-hmm.
and we talked about the American dream.
Wow.
And so instead of just talking about Janie, the main
Mhm,
character's
mhm.
American dream, we took it to what is your dream? And is
Wow.
it based on the American dream or is it based on something else?
Mm.
And so what I discovered was these kids had dreams that people had never heard, dreams that they didn't think could be fulfilled. And some of them thought they had a dream, but it wasn't big enough.
Okay.
You know, so we had those kind of conversations to guide them in their writing. Kimberly, the part that touched me the most
Yeah.
was even for the very first book signing that I hosted in my classroom for them. I invited all the parents, teachers, the community.
Nice.
I was very excited to have Jason Newton from Fox. Is he WBAM?
Uh-oh. I don't know.
Well, anyways, they got media press because of Jason, because he saw this on social
Right.
media. He reached out and wanted to cover
That's beautiful.
their book, but also the parents
Mhm.
in the audience watching their children talk about their experiences
Yeah.
and their dreams was overwhelming because many of them were in tears.
Mhm.
Many of them didn't know
Mhm.
that their kids had these kind of ideas.
Wow.
And then one moment that I'll never forget was I had this football player in my class, and he was stocky. You know, he was one of the kids nobody messed with.
Yeah.
But he would come in my class. He was like a big old baby, you know. So I was proud of him for participating in this project because he had come from a history of being told that he wasn't going to be anything but a football player.
Mm.
And he sat in front of that audience and very tearfully shared
Wow.
that he had done something that those people that criticized him had not done.
Had not
he was
ever
a
done.
published author and
Ooh,
he had not even
I love
graduated
it.
from high school
I
yet.
love it.
So that was the first
Mhm.
book, and I said, "Oh, I gotta do this again."
Yeah.
I mean, they got me on the news. I'm in tears. I'm like, "Hold on, y'all, hold the camera." But I continued that journey all the way through the end. We one of the last books that we did was called "I Am the CEO,"
Okay.
which stood for Chief Executive Overcomer.
Yes,
So they
I
wrote
remember seeing
about
that
things
come
that they
out.
overcame.
Mhm.
We dedicated it to the CEO of the school district, Dr.
Nice.
Sonia Santelises, and she attended as well.
Okay.
And I just am in awe when you offer these kind of spaces and opportunities for young people, how they step up to the plate
Absolutely.
so greatly.
Absolutely. I love that. And just talking about it, I was like, I'm actually talking to her about teenagers and how they feel. So, that's my soft spot as well. I'm like, we would both be in tears over here if we start talking too much.
Yes.
Love the teens. And I had tried to do something similar.
No.
In
Can I
my-
correct you? You
Yes.
didn't try. You did it.
Well, yeah,
You
we got
did it.
interrupted
You did it.
by circumstances that hit the world.
Yes.
And so we didn't get to finish the project, but it was just such a joy. And so when I saw you doing it too, I was like, yes, because just reading their stories, like you said, is just so incredible, and they're so talented. But that's an area where I think if nobody ever offers them the opportunity to do that, they don't even know it exists.
Yep.
And so
And
kudos to
just
you.
the whole entrepreneurship side of it, right? So like once
Absolutely.
I hosted that book signing in the classroom, they purchased their own copies of the books
Yes.
at cost,
Yes.
and they learned how to
Yeah.
upsell.
I love it.
Oh, with kids
Yes.
that were like hardcore,
Yeah,
coming up to me after, Miss Hall, look at all this money I made. I was like, keep doing that, baby.
Yes.
So,
yeah,
yes,
that is
absolutely.
so great. So great. So I want to talk to you about just like writing as a whole, like your experiences as a writer, because you've also, touch on some really heavy topics in your writing and everything. And what has that been like for you?
Oh, so first I can say it's a therapeutic process for me.
I always say there's healing through writing.
There's definitely healing, especially if you come from a space and a place where you feel unheard. That journal will always hear you.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
And so I think because of that, I've been able to help other people in their same journey of healing through writing. What I've discovered is there's certain things that I like to recall when I look back at my writings. And so in the process, I kind of narrowed it down to the 5 things I want to read every day.
Okay. Oh,
And so every day I journal, and I write the same 5 things: an affirmation, an inspirational quote. I write a copy of scripture that is connected to like how I'm feeling that day. I write a gratitude list. It's very tailored to what I'm grateful for on that day. And then I ponder like some positive event that happened that day. So now I have journals full of all these positive things that have happened in my life. And I wouldn't have that if I only focused on what happened each day and kind of put that spin on the negative. So what I've encountered is I meet a lot of people who are like, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, all the time.
Or I don't want to write about the negative all the time, and my life seems to be going in that direction, so I don't want to write about that. So this method and process has helped other people have a focus when they write and not go to a blank page and say, I don't know where to begin.
Right.
But it had to start with me, and I had to do that for a long time myself to see that it worked. My latest book, Stop the Silence, details how I use it in my healing journey as a survivor of child sexual abuse.
Right.
And so now that book has been internationally read.
Nice.
There's international authors as well, which is really powerful because I think people need to hear their voice from different spaces. And the entire book is only about how we started our healing journey.
So this was an anthology project.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I'm
I
so
love
proud of it.
anthologies.
So proud of it.
Nice.
Yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you talked a little bit about all the things. So I talked about all the things you do, right? So how do you balance your writing career and how do you balance it out with all the other commitments that you have?
Oh, good. That's a great question. Also, the answer is one that I've often heard people can't do or don't want to do, which is fine. But I really think that sometimes when there are things you want to accomplish, you do have to go the extra mile to get to your goal.
Absolutely.
And so I get up at 5 every day. I have a whole routine, Kimberly.
Okay, let's hear it.
I take my vitamin at 5 o'clock. I drink an entire bottle of water by 6
Oh,
a.m.
that's great.
And in that hour, because I try to sit up so, my vitamins can digest and all that. Girl, I'm trying to take care of myself. I'm getting
A whole queen.
But I'll sit at my desk in my craft room, and that's when I will reflect on either the day before or the day ahead and write those 5 things out.
Nice.
I also write out my prayers in a journaling Bible as well. So I have
I want to talk about that a little bit
books filled with writing. Like
Yeah.
when I leave this earth, people are gonna be like, "Did she do anything other than
write? Yes, you did so much more, but yes. That's awesome. So talk a little bit about your Confident Canvas, and since you talked about journaling, your Bible.
Yeah, so I've always been into art. I've always been creative. I think creativity shows up in different ways in all of our lives.
Absolutely.
But once we hone in on that way that we get joy from, specifically, you start driving for real, with the gas. And so Confident Canvas derived from me discovering Bible journaling. So I was on Pinterest one day, and I'm an artist, right? I'm looking at these pictures, and I said, did they paint in the Bible? And so I'm looking and scrolling. I said, I can do this.
Yeah.
But I had no idea that there was a Bible that existed that had extended margin space for those illustrations, and I didn't know what they were illustrating about. Like, was it the scripture? Were you drawing Joseph, or like what is this? So I did my own research, And at the time, Instagram was fairly new. So I started an account because I am a hoarder of memories. And I wanted a space. Oh my gosh, yes. So I started an account for everything because I want to keep the memories digitally alive.
Wow.
And so I said, well, as I do this process in my Bibles, I'm just going to document it on this account. Now, I named it Confident Canvas because I was thinking of like a canvas you paint on, and then I was confident in myself.
Yeah.
It took
That's
off.
awesome. Yeah.
It took off.
Because you've been teaching classes and everything with it, right?
I can't even believe. See, that's how you know that it's a God-given talent, right?
Yep.
Because I didn't have any intentions of doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
I just wanted to share my little Bible journaling page.
And it's so beautiful. I don't even know that a lot of people know about it.
Yeah.
Because I didn't before I saw you start doing that. But I think it's another beautiful way for you to express your creativity. And now you're teaching other people how to do the same thing.
Isn't that crazy?
You're amazing. Yes, you are amazing. And so, what makes, going back to writing, because, you know, we can go off on tangents about everything else, but what do you think makes a great book?
Oh, thank you for asking.
Help the people out. Help the people out.
Help the people out. Well, first of all, if you don't have 50 type pages, then keep writing, right? Okay? Because sometimes I buy books from people and I'm like, y'all, I finished this in the car on the way home. Come on, give me some more.
Give me some more.
So I think it's important, those things that we got tired of doing in our English classes. That development, character development.
Yes.
Where you have a topic sentence and you expound. Having good explanation and description is very important. Most people are visual learners. And if they're looking at words, they need to be able to create that visual in their mind as they're reading your book. But if you just say, I went to the store, and you haven't described how you got there, what the store looks like or anything like that, I'm a bit disinterested as a visual learner. I'm just being honest.
True.
And I also feel like it's important to plot your book out before writing it.
Okay.
So I think people have an idea, like they might say, I want to write a book on marketing. Okay, but what's the plot of the book? Like, where's it going to start? What's your crescendo? And what is it going to come down to as far as
That's
your
really
resolution?
good, though, that you use the marketing book as the example for that. Because when you were talking about plot and everything, I automatically start thinking fiction.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's really good. So keep going.
Yeah, you can have, please have a plot for your nonfiction
Nice.
book. It is important that there's still a climax or a part that I'm excited about.
Right.
That makes me want to do your strategy.
Right.
And even if it's not told in a narrative form, what's that big thing that no one knows that when you teach them through your book, they're going to be more successful? That would be your climax of your story.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
My goodness. So let's back it up a little bit, though. What inspired you to become a writer?
Carmelita, I'm being honest.
Okay.
Don't think that I'm just saying this because I'm sitting here. I'm being really honest.
Okay.
People like you, Tamika Hall. There was so many of my friends that were doing this similar work. Like you and I were both mentoring girls. Tamika and I were both advocates against domestic violence and sexual abuse. And so as I watched y'all grow, y'all were published in books. I remember when you came to my classroom to talk to my mentees. You bought books with you.
I sure did.
You bought books with you. I said, well, shoot, I'm bringing a book with me next time I
I love that.
And I felt empowered because I saw people who looked like me doing it.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? Like, I was frequently in Barnes & Noble in the library, okay?
Wow.
I knew to look on the shelf and see books by authors. I know that there are Black authors. I'm not oblivious. I teach English. But to see somebody I could talk to on the phone who had published a book was a whole nother level that kind of pushed me in that direction. And so Tamika actually helped me publish the first anthology for Queendom, which was called From One Queen to Another.
Yes.
And then you came with your books. I said, all right, I think I'm going to write my own. And that was how Positively Bodyful came about. I actually started with an anthology and then moved into let me write.
That's so beautiful. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Wow.
I still got that book too that you gave me.
Oh, do you really?
I keep all books from Prince.
Wow. So let's talk about what your writing process looks like. When you decide to write a book, what's that process look like for you?
It starts on the phone.
Oh,
notes app.
okay, notes. Okay.
You know, I actually have a running list of topics I want to write about.
Okay.
So if at any time I'm in the mood to write and I don't know what to write about, I
That's
just go to
good.
the list and visit it. Because sometimes you'll be sitting somewhere and you'll say, you know, we need to have a book that's about this. So I just put that topic on that list. But also, I go through when I especially write narratives like Unholy Communion, because that one took me a long time to write because it was my story. I was worried about, you know, family and friends identifying themselves in the book, so I had to make sure I could really comb to look through it to make sure that it was appropriate for public reading. And so I wrote like a map out that was almost as long as the book, to be honest. There were character pages where I drew the character, their name was drawn real big at the top, and all these details about them, what they like to eat, what colors they like, what they wore to school, what school they went to, what kind of friends they had. Like, it was so detailed that maybe even those sheets could have been a story in itself. And it was after brainstorming that deeply about the story that I was able to start writing it.
Wow.
I also just want to note that I think I took so long with the plotting of the book and the narrative that it kind of kept me away from having to write it, which I think I was trying to avoid for a little while.
Okay.
And so, but I do find that part of the process, that brainstorming part that we used to do in school, you remember we drew those bubbles?
Yes.
Listen, honey, I still draw bubbles. Okay. The bubbles were one of the best things that ever helped me. That extension of the extension of the extension and get you down to the heart of what you're trying to say, so that you can backtrack and make those details that you need in your story. Good stuff.
Yeah, that's good. How do you handle failure or rejection in writing? Love your expressions.
Like, oh, gosh. Because you know I'm gonna tell you the truth.
Yes, absolutely.
Child, let me tell you, I actually had a failure this year.
Oh.
I will admit. So I'm gonna say this: for people who have experienced any type of trauma, whether it was in childhood or adult life, we have ways of responding to things that we might not even recognize as a safety method to protect ourselves when we find that we're encountering failure or anything similar. And so mine was always to retreat. And I know that about myself. And so I retreated when I didn't get the response I wanted to a book that I had written. And I mean, retreated very publicly. Like, took the event down. I was just like, this ain't happening. I'm not doing it. Thanks anyways. I appreciate the support from the three of y'all. You know, but what I also recognize that I'm human, that there are people who are willing to support you, but you have to sometimes be more patient with the process than you allow yourself to be. Yeah. And I think my human side is to be like, I'm not doing this anymore. But my mature LaQuisha side will come to at some point and say, girl, put that back on the internet. Yes. And so that's my process.
You were just having a moment.
Yeah, I was having a moment, a very public one.
Yeah. And that's okay. Yes. I want to go back to, you mentioned Unholy Communion, which was your personal story. Yes. And so I want you to talk about what that journey was like for you, or with that writing, what that whole thing looked like, you know, because it's difficult sometimes when we're writing about our own personal story, our personal trauma. So what was that like for you?
Well, I wanted to tell you this really nice story about how therapeutic it was and how inspired I was and all that. I was scared to death the whole time. There were certain chapters that took me a while to write because I did not want to consider those events again. Yes. I also had to make up some parts of the book. It's like historical nonfiction. So most of it's true, but I had to add some stuff to, one, deter people from figuring out who I was talking about, and two, to give more plot to the story that I didn't technically have myself.
Yeah.
So essentially, Unholy Communion is about how, as a teenager, I navigated encountering domestic violence at the hands of my parents, and then that matriculating into sexual abuse at the hands of a pastor. I needed to tell the pastor's story, though, in order to tell mine.
Wow.
And that was hard.
Yeah.
Because I basically created a narrative that something happened to him in order to give him the unction to do something to me. And so I don't know if it's true, but I do know that hurt people
Yes.
sometimes. And so I will say that while it was hard, it took me almost 10 years
Wow.
to publicly, yes, I started a book in college.
Wow.
I wanted to tell my story in college. It was not until I was an adult and had my little entrepreneurship under my belt where I was like, I think I could do this now. And so I stopped writing that book for about 5 years. It just sat on, we got the books that sit on a hard drive.
Yeah.
And once I got to a place as an advocate where I wasn't afraid to share my story anymore, that's when I finished the book. But I will say that after it came out, had such a great impact on so many people.
Yes.
And they wrote to me saying, me too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like literally some specific parts of my story people could relate to. I was very grateful that I wrote it. So I'm not going to tell you that was easy.
No, I know
And
it wasn't.
and backlash. I did get a little bit of backlash from
I'm
family.
sure.
They figured out who they were. I changed
They figured
all
out
the
who they
names.
were.
I changed all the names. I've added stuff. And they still was
I
like,
think that was me.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So there was discussion in the family. But by the time that became a family situation, I was confident enough in standing on my story and my truth.
Yeah.
And nobody taking that from me. So
Absolutely.
while it might bother someone that it was written, this is my story to tell.
Yeah.
And I'm not asking for permission anymore.
Absolutely.
Because Kimberly, I was silenced for so long. That was my time to say, I'm not going to be quiet about this anymore.
Exactly. Kudos to you for that.
Thank you.
And so you brought up your advocacy, and as we're winding down, I want you to be able to talk a little bit about that and your purple and all the things that you're doing with that. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so it's in my heart. I feel like it's my purpose to help young people and adults who experience what I did, from domestic violence to sexual abuse, suicide attempts, depression and anxiety. So many things that people don't like to talk about.
Yeah.
I have empowered myself and now empowered others to have these conversations, and as a result, I feel like I had to do additional things to help bring awareness.
Yeah.
And so April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and this month, October, is Domestic Violence Awareness. And so I encourage people, I fill my social media, my wardrobe with the color. People ask me, you've been wearing purple all week. Well, let me tell you why. It's just a way to open the door to the conversation. I also have volunteered for several organizations over the years. I've started a few programs of my own, including She Rose Awards, which I stopped prior to the pandemic, we weren't going to galas once 2020 came around.
Right.
But prior to that, I was honoring what I called unsung survivors by giving them a safe space to tell their story publicly for the first time. And so we did that for about 5 years through, up until the pandemic. But those spaces are important. So I turned that over into art now.
Awesome.
And so I have 2 art campaigns, Reveal Your Teal in April and Restore Your Royalty in October. And so I encourage artists to use those colors in their art while also writing captions that speak to the statistics or the resources available for people who might be looking on social media. And
That's awesome.
fundraise at the same time.
Yeah.
So
That's great. That is so great. This has been such a joy. I always love being in your presence. You are just so awesome. And so I want everybody else to know where they can stay connected with you, where they can find your books, all of that. So go right there and tell people where they can stay contact you.
So hi, I'm LaQuisha Hall. You can find me at LaQuisha Hall on everything online or at Confident Canvas. And I'm also at confidentcanvas.com, where you can purchase any of the books that were mentioned today, plus some of the ones you haven't seen yet.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being here, coming here and taking time to bless me, our audience. It's just been such a joy. Thank you so much for being here.
You too.
And thank you so much to our viewing audience. If you think you are ready to write a book or you know someone who is interested in writing a book, head on over to www.writethebooktv.com and connect with us there. Until next week, bye-bye.